Hi, my name is Danny Dumani. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also a yoga teacher. And today I want to talk to you about mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness, and how it correlates to our relationships, and specifically our relationships with our significant others. So I'm going to start with a story about Bill and Jenny. And Bill and Jenny have been married about 12 years. And Jenny wants to go to a dinner party that she and Bill were invited to by her coworkers. And she asks Bill when she comes home on Friday night if he's up for going. And he states, you know what, I'm actually just wanting to be low-key. I really don't feel very social. I've had a tough week at work, and I'd really like to stay home on Saturday. So right away, Jenny begins to raise her voice a little. And she says, you used to be up for anything. You were so spontaneous when we met. Bill begins to get a little upset. What? You're saying I'm boring? What about you? You never want to hang out with me anymore. All you ever want to do is hang out with your coworkers. At this point, Jenny is angry. I never said you were boring. And now you're saying I'm a horrible wife? I work day and night to make you happy, and you're so ungrateful. So does this sound familiar? Yeah, I think if we've ever been in a relationship, we know what it's like to start out with a completely reasonable conversation, and then it escalates slowly or maybe even very quickly to something much bigger than that. These type of emotional responses cause a snowball effect, and all of a sudden it's gotten really personal, and both partners are throwing out statements that they will regret likely once they've calmed down. So how does mindfulness come into play? Well, for starters, it can actually help prevent the escalation of an argument, leading to problem solving without personal attacks. And though these fights may seem easy to recover from in the moment, the accumulation of these moments can really contribute to the relationship failing in the long run. Other ways mindfulness can help relationships are in the following areas. Mindfulness presents a valuable tool for staying close to our partner while facing the daily challenges due to life's demands. So if you're living life, you know that life pulls you in all directions. The kids, the pets, your parents, school, work, whatever it might be. And so we're so distracted by those outside influences that it's really difficult to sometimes come home to our partners and be fully present for them. So mindfulness is a technique that allows us to strengthen that ability. Mindfulness also helps us to cope with stress in our relationships, as well as outside stressors that we might otherwise bring home with us. So the same idea comes in there, which is sometimes if we've had a really tough week, a tough day, we take that home with us. We don't leave it at the door. And then we take those feelings that we might have towards somebody else or some other situation, and we might put that onto our partner. Also, mindfulness allows us to have a deeper understanding of both our own needs as well as our partner's needs, which combats the need to mind read. So again, if you've ever been in a relationship, you may know the feeling of feeling like your partner expects you to read their minds. Or you may even know the feeling of expecting your partner to read your mind. So while mindfulness does not help us to have psychic abilities, it does help us to be in tune with our partners so that we may understand their cues, both verbal and nonverbal. The beauty of mindfulness is that though it takes practice, it is fairly simple and you can start right now. If you can, just make sure you're seated, you're not driving, you're safe, and have both feet on the ground. And I want you to take your hands and interlace your fingers together. And for the next 10 seconds, I want you to squeeze your hands as tightly as possible. You can close your eyes here. I'll close my eyes with you. And I'll tell you when to stop squeezing as tight as you can. Now slowly release your hands apart from one another and start to notice the experience of the sensations that are coming through both hands. So it may be very subtle or gradual, and it may not seem like there's anything, and all of a sudden you feel something different. Just pay attention, just be aware for the next few moments. So congratulations, you've just practiced mindfulness. It's taking your focus and putting it on your body with your mind. And you're tying the two together, and it really doesn't leave a lot of space for something from the outside world to come in. So here's another exercise for you. I want you to sit, again, relaxed, your arms by your sides this time, just relaxed in your lap, whatever works for you. And I want you to close your eyes. And we're going to start to breathe in and out. And with every exhale that you take, I want you to think of relaxing so much that you're melting into your chair more and more with every exhale. So we'll begin to inhale for the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold your breath for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Completely melting. Try that one more time. Slowly breathe in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And melt into your chair for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Just observe for a moment. And then when you're ready, just flick your eyes open and maybe take a few glances around, just taking in your environment. So again, take a moment to notice what shifted when you were allowing yourself to breathe deeper and when you were allowing yourself to relax. Perhaps, again, that outside world stayed out a little bit longer than it usually does. So you've experienced mindfulness. What exactly is it? There's a million definitions of mindfulness out there, but I've picked 2 of my favorite. Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn explains it like this. Mindfulness is about paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. So paying attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. So what does that mean? Well, if we're lucky enough to be mindful of our emotions and our thoughts, oftentimes judgments will come into this. Say you might be really afraid, nervous, anxious that you're going to fail your next job interview that's tomorrow. And your critical voice starts to come in. It starts to say, you shouldn't be afraid, you're such a failure, you're so lazy. All of those things that our critical voices, which we all have, tend to tell us. Well, mindfulness would be you being present with the fact that you're afraid, you're fearful, you're anxious, but without letting those judgments come in. And that's not an easy task, so that's why it takes practice. They're going to come in, and then you breathe, you allow yourself to move out of those. Dan Siegel, another mindfulness researcher and author, explains it like this. It's a little more complicated. The human brain evolved as an anticipation machine, constantly scanning the environment for threats in order to increase the probability of survival. Early humans were able to relax only when the environment felt completely safe to them. The challenge for many of us in our 21st century lifestyles is that we've forgotten or never learned how to turn off the danger scanning process. Mindfulness practice can provide a way of doing just that. When you focus on the breath coming in, you can safely anticipate that the next breath will go out. Again, it'll be followed by another inhale and another exhale. Breathing is predictable, so life at that moment becomes predictable and safe. And so when we talk about our nervous system, when our breath becomes rapid, it becomes shallow, our nervous system starts to get activated into fight or flight. And as soon as we go there, a part of our brain actually shuts down and we're not able to use the same reasoning skills that we normally would. So when it comes to the idea of mindfulness and interacting with our partners, we've moved into fight or flight as soon as we feel that our partner doesn't really understand our needs. This means a portion of our brain, again, is actually shut down and we become incapable of reacting like we normally would because our brain thinks we're fighting for our life. And I know that sounds crazy, but our brain doesn't have the best filter once we're in fight or flight. So even if we're just arguing over what's for dinner, our brain, if we're activated, actually goes into a place where we think we're fighting for our life. We will likely say things we'll regret later. How many times have you looked back at an argument and you don't even recognize the person you were? You're like, who was that person? How could I have said those things? So when practicing mindfulness, we can avoid getting into the activated zone, and we can begin to step into more of an observing role. It is almost as if we're putting things into slow motion instead of fast forward. And when in slow motion, we can observe ourselves and our partners and become more aware of what they are trying to communicate, what their needs are, and how we can listen and respond in a way that is both respectful to ourselves as well as our partners. So let's get back to Bill and Jenny. Let's consider the scenario, but we're going to inject mindfulness into it this time. Once Jenny realizes Bill is not initially up for a night out with her friends, she may take a moment to breathe mindfully, so just like we practiced, and to ask Bill why the work week was particularly exhausting. So she just starts to get curious instead of angry, instead of assuming that he's just being antisocial. She might ask the question, did something happen this week at work that you want to talk about? Is there anything I can do to help? And if Bill has been practicing his mindfulness, he may scan his body for tension. He might try that relaxation technique of melting into the chair once he realizes he's tensing up. And he will then start to be able to regulate his nervous system. He can then identify the empathy in his wife's questions, and he may be open to more productive dialogue. He may then realize that saying no to his wife's requests had nothing to do with her, but it came from misdirected anger resulting from a stressful work week. Now, none of this could be possible if both partners are emotionally activated. But if we are capable of slowing down our process, with practice, we can start to effectively communicate with our partners without building resentments that lead to distrust in the relationships. Through this communication, we can better identify our own needs as well as our partners. Perhaps Jenny realizes that she was quick to become defensive because earlier that day she'd gotten some criticism from her boss. She then becomes able to acknowledge this to Bill, maybe letting him know that this happened, and then it would be helpful if he could be especially gentle with his feedback. And since we are assuming that both Bill and Jenny had less than stellar work weeks, if each partner has a sense of mindfulness around this and is able to communicate this to one another, it may be possible to unload those stressors so that they are not hovering for the rest of the weekend. And that way they're not taking their feelings that are towards other people and situations and putting them on to each other. Home should be a safe place. And mindfulness helps us to recognize this. So instead of our brains acting as these anticipation machines, constantly scanning the environment for threats in order to increase our sense of safety and survival, we can feel safe communicating with our partners. Then we can turn off the anticipation machines, we can turn on Netflix, and recognize we are safe with the person we love. So you may be asking, what happens if my partner's not really digging this mindfulness thing? They're just not all that interested. Well, I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't make a difference, because it absolutely does. If both partners can be involved, that's ideal. But even if you start practicing mindfulness on your own, you will start to notice the difference in your interactions and relationships, the way you communicate in general. This will change the conversation, and because humans are set up to mirror other humans, it is likely your partner will observe what you're doing and will make some changes on his or her own. He or she may be even a bit confused, but often this will lead to your partner eventually desiring the recipe to your secret calming sauce. How many times have you asked your partner to do something, and it's only when you've forgotten that you asked them that they actually start to do it? This can happen with mindfulness. To conclude, I've left you with a few exercises that you can find if you click below the video link. And I also want to say that this practice can affect all your relationships. So with your friends, with your children, with your family, with your coworkers, and especially when talking to tech support or visiting the DMV. So you've already started the practice, and it only takes a few minutes a day. It's pretty simple, and if you stay with it, you will notice a difference. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn more about mindfulness and relationships.